Talking Books with me, Michelle Martin. You know, in this show, I look at all sorts of books, right? But the one criteria that a book has to meet before I talk about it on this show is I genuinely have to love it. So let me read you an excerpt of But Mostly I Think of You by Candice Lim. The sea and tears are the cure for anything, a poet once said. The sea seems to be the beginning and the end of everything. When I see the waves lap up against the shore, I am reminded of something else I read about how the sea and the shore will remain forever together. But mostly, I think of you. But Mostly I Think of You is a tiny little volume of 12 short stories, and it's beautifully illustrated by a very talented artist in Singapore who recently had a solo exhibition, and her work, I understand, is in an MRT station. The talented Messi Mixi, but before me right now is the very talented author, But Mostly I Think of You, Candice Lim. Welcome to Talking Books.
Thank you for having me, Michelle. Thank you so much.
I look at these 12 short stories. To me, they seem to be dark fairy tales almost of love and longing for adults, and they really speak to something deep inside, whether you're talking about love or you're talking about loss or the memory of love. Tell us, was there an overwhelming theme was there an overarching theme for the 12 stories?
Yes, you basically have nailed it on the head. I mean, when I started to curate my own writings and try to come up with this volume of stories, I want to go along with a sentiment that it's of love, but at the same time of longing, like you said, and a little bit of loss. Also, not just confining it to love, but also friendship.
Yes.
So basically,
all
relationships.
Forms of love.
Yeah, exactly. So self-love too, and also, I mean, just thinking about what life and love mean to someone out there. I think basically it resonates very deeply with me because I try to bring out such feelings when I write, hoping somebody would get it, would understand. So that's how I came to select my stories for this
12
volume.
stories. Apparently, these stories have been sitting in your notebooks for a few years now.
Yeah.
What kind of courage does it take to exhibit them to the world? When did you decide, okay, time to actually show someone my work?
I guess this is something that I've always wanted to do since I was young. But
You look pretty young right now, but younger. How old are you, by the way?
I'm turning 40 this year.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I was young, writing diaries and stuff, I've always wanted to publish a book. I guess for me to get there, I thought, okay, maybe write a few short stories and see where we go from here.
Yeah.
And so I think this is my first step towards that.
So this is your debut book.
Correct.
I'm looking at it, it's so petite, and there's something exquisitely minimalist about it.
Yeah.
Even though the some of the illustrations take up a whole page, there's just something minimalist about it. So when I read that you enjoyed Japanese crime novels,
Yes.
I thought, now I understand the tone and the tenor of this book, because there's something about the Japanese storytelling, especially in the crime novels, where less is said and tension is built up in a specific way. I'm, of course, generalizing. But, did some of that make it into your writing?
Yes, definitely. I enjoy reading such stories, and my favorite author is obviously Murakami, and he's so surreal in his technique, and it's just a few words and he can immediately transport you to somewhere else. And I strive to learn how to write like that myself, but of course I have so much more room to improve on, and
it's a great first job.
Thank you so much.
It's really a beautiful piece of work, but Mostly I Think of You as the title, listeners. Tell us about the story Goddess, which is about someone with flaming red hair and a tear-stained face. And it's such a sad story.
Do you like it?
I love it.
I was trying to convey an emotion of loss, somebody pining for someone else, and can't find that person and what it does to a person
It has no
physically.
closure and
No
no
closure,
resolution.
exactly. And she's just stranded. I mean, physically in the story, she's stranded here on Earth. But in emotional state of mind, she could be stranded anywhere with that, in that realm with her lover and just never finding him or her. So physically manifesting to her losing her, flaming red hair and just, yeah, it's a little sad, that story.
It is, but the thing that lifts all these stories are they're so fantastical. I mean,
Exactly.
even as I read about Goddess, this woman with a flaming head of hair, and then I look at that wonderful illustration that comes with it, and she looks like something with a beak and
Yeah, it's a mythical creature. We try to make it.
and this glorious mane of red hair,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
really
yeah.
that the hair just pops out of the page. Really,
Exactly.
it is the only feature that is colored in the page.
Yeah.
So this idea of marrying a short story with an illustration,
Mm-hmm.
how did that occur to you, and why did you choose that mode of storytelling?
Inspired by Tim Burton's book. Of course, his lovely book, Oyster Boy.
The melancholy death
Yes.
of Oyster Boy. And
When I
other
first read it,
stories.
I'm like, amazing. How can you humanize, certain things, everyday things like Matchstick Girl and oysters and whatnot? And that stuck with me for a long time. And so when I came up with, wanting to do this book, I very much wanted to have some of these stories illustrated, not in a very straightforward fashion, but something like that.
Do
So-
these characters stay with you for a while? Tell me about Bonsai Girl.
Yes, for sure. She and Banana Boy are the first characters in my own writing where I don't write from a first person's point of view, but I literally created them just out of my imagination and inspired by him, of course. So when I did that, and it stayed with me for a long while before I decided to showcase them to the world in this book, because I'm not certain how people would take it. Like, would they even understand that this is beyond just the characterization of these two creatures, but the emotions and feelings that they share? Do you know what I mean? Like, one is so skinny and slim, and the other is clumsy and whatnot. So I was trying to, play off these two different sets of characteristics in them. Yeah, so I mean, that's the longest so-called narrative I've written of, two characters. So, yeah.
You mentioned this is your first book. You've been writing for a while and continually refining your writing.
Yeah.
Tell us about that process. What does that mean, and what does that entail for you?
A lot of hard work and discipline to want to write every day if I could. So when I first started writing Bonsai Girl and Banana Boy, I stopped for a long time because I keep going back to want to refine the story and refine the technical parts of it. But then if I stay too long at something, which is something that I must improve, then I begin to lose the plot somewhat. So I want to move on to write something new. So this is the stamina that I have to build up to make myself a better writer, that you cannot be tired of your own refinement. So
It's a different sort of writing altogether. You
Exactly.
were managing editor of Green
Yeah.
Architectural Magazine for 8 years. You have also edited for Illustrated and reference books. I noticed, the front cover of But Mostly I Think of You is a woman seemingly in despair. All you see is her hair, and you see these
Vines.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I was going to say tendrils of green things growing all around her. And also, I read a story in this book about someone who swallows a seed, and that
Yes.
story just stayed with me and really was the reason why I said, okay, I would love to speak with Candice.
yeah.
Do green themes weave into your work because of your 8 years at Architectural Magazine? Green, it was called.
Yeah. Maybe. I mean, obviously, when we write, different kinds of influences from our lives,
You don't know where they come from. They just bubble up.
Subconsciously, coming out in my writing. But I guess maybe the organic process of writing it just manifests itself into this story. When I first started writing some of these stories, I wouldn't know how they would end. So that's the magical part of it.
Isn't it? The process of
Exactly.
writing leads you there.
Exactly. So when I write to a certain point, I think, okay, that's the story.
You're talking books with me, Michelle Martin. But Mostly I Think of You is a tiny little volume of 12 short stories. For me right now is a very talented author, But Mostly I Think of You, Candice Lim. What about the size of this book? Was it very intentional, the slim volume of 12 stories in this petite compilation?
Yeah, we wanted something where people can bring around and put in their bag and just read it when they feel like having something to read. So deliberately penguin-sized, so to speak. So this is referencing, the Penguin series of books where the earlier editions, they have this size. So we kept it that way.
What do you hope readers feel when they walk away from this book?
I hope they can see themselves in some of these stories and feel like, okay, so what I'm feeling at a certain point in my life, it's not so strange after all, and it's okay, it's normal to feel like sad over a particular incident or an emotion and just internalize it, and there's no way to express it until you choose to either draw, write, speak to someone about it, or,
So when you
whatever.
started writing, was it your way of processing emotions?
Yes, very much. Yeah, I'm not that good with verbalizing emotions at a goal. So when I write it down, I begin to understand myself better, so to speak.
Tell us
Yeah.
about some of your favorite novels. You like Japanese crime novels. I'm very happy to to note that. What are you reading right now
I'm
that other
reading
listeners might enjoy?
Fuminori. Yes, I'm reading his latest publication called The Gun, but he wrote it very early on. He just published it later, translated later. Very intense, very, very good. And it's all about, this guy finding a gun and his relationship with it. So it's very simple words, but so much intensity.
Yes.
So I like that very much.
Yes, it comes through in your work as well.
Yeah.
Very simple, sparse almost, but it just hits you with the emotion.
Thank you.
That's what I got
Yeah.
from it. It's very unfair to ask an author of 12 short stories, which is a favorite. Is there one that speaks to you?
Yeah, The Sea is my favorite story.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. So I wrote it at a point where I was feeling a lot of emotions about something, and so referencing the sea, it's something that I always go back to. And this particular quote about how salt water is the cure for everything, I read it over and over again somewhere, and it just resonates with me. And from there on, the story just flowed, and I tried to contextualize it in a letter from a boy to somebody else, and the process was very smooth, and it wasn't, sometimes stories are difficult to tell even when you're writing it. There are certain stories that just wouldn't come out, and this one was one of the smoothest flowing ones that I've written.
Well, I could smell the brine of the sea wind and feel the sea breeze when I read that short story. So it's
Thank you.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Really lovely. You're listening to Talking Books. I'm Michelle Martin. Stay tuned. More of the title, But Mostly I Think of You by Candice Lim. Welcome back to Talking Books. I'm Michelle Martin. This is the only radio talk show where we celebrate everything to do with reading. I'm sitting across Candice Lim, and she's put together 12 short stories in a beautifully illustrated book called But Mostly I Think of You, a book that's meant to reach out to people on a very emotional level, and I think it achieves that beautifully. Tell me about the work of your illustrator, Messi Mixi, for people who don't know about her. Stunning, and really complements the writing as well in terms of style.
Yes.
How do you decide to work with her, and why?
Well, the journey wasn't that easy. I mean, I came across some illustrators who didn't come through, and I looked really hard for Messi Mixi. I came across her from my publisher who knew her, and I went through her Instagram and her Facebook and looked through her drawings and illustrations, and I thought, how come I did not come across her any sooner? Then it would really, be a great step forward rather than bumbling in the dark, right? So I met her, and she said, okay, send me your stories, and if I feel, as passionately about them as you do, then yes, let's do it. So it was super nerve-wracking. Like, what if she doesn't like my stories? It felt like, like a proposal almost, right? So I'm like, oh,
Please
would
don't
you
reject my
Yeah,
stories.
please don't reject. So I sent it, and thank God she loved them too.
Yeah.
And that's how we got started, and that was really, really organic process of discussion, and she would sketch a few things and she would show me, and so at every step of the way she's been really good to work with, and she understands.
Do you like the poetry of Lang Leaf? Because there are some similarities I see.
Yes, she's so talented. I mean, nowhere near her. She's like, I've read her stuff and I thought, wow, amazing. Yeah,
really amazing. What I like about your short stories is they seem very poetic.
Thank you.
That's what I like. There's this quality of sparseness and a lot coming through in one line that I really enjoy. Did you start writing thinking I will need illustrations to lift it, or how did that happen? This idea of marrying your writing and illustrations in a very big way.
No, I didn't start writing them thinking that they will need illustrations, but
you didn't even start writing them for an audience. You started to write for yourself, right?
Exactly. It is when I thought, okay, let's do this. Since you've been wanting to do it all along, let's go for it. And then I started looking through my stories and, okay, what can be illustrated in that manner, in a way that it sits in my mind.
Yeah.
So that's how I started picking the stories and talking to her about it. And
many people out there might have a similar dream, a drawer full of short stories that they want to publish, and you took the self-publishing route. Now talk to us about the pragmatic side of things, in terms of funding that. What were you looking at?
You have to really be disciplined to save a lot of money first. Of course, you can go through NAC's different grants for writers. But you
funded this completely yourself?
Exactly, by myself. Because I realized the grants, they have different periods of time where you can apply, and then you need rather rigorous approval procedures. And if I'm not wrong, I might be wrong, but some of them would need a kind of national identity kind of stories where it.
So you had this little book and you wanted to put it out your own way.
Yeah, exactly. It have nothing to do with how Singaporeans might.
Is this a run of 5,000 copies initially?
This is a run of 1,000 copies.
1,000 special copies, and you can get them at Kinokuniya, Books Actually. Are they selling online anywhere?
Yeah, Books Actually online shop.
Okay.
Also at Super Mama, the shop where they sell a lot of quirky items with Singaporean designs and motifs. Super Mama
okay.
At the National Design Center, if I'm not wrong, or they have moved somewhere. And
so you did everything yourself then? You published it yourself, you reach out to these bookstores yourself too?
Of course, I've helped with my publisher friend who did a Tokyo Cafe book. So he knows some people already through that. So I, sat down with him and we discussed. And
I'm just wondering what the route is for, a self-published author.
So, well, firstly, you need to save up to print
and
the
can
book
you give us
yourself.
an estimate?
You need to save like 10 to 20 grand if you want to do this.
You're a big saver.
Yeah, it's been a long it's been a long time coming. It's been a long time coming. So, and if you don't have to work with an illustrator, if it's just yourself writing, then of course you can save that amount of money.
Did you lay it out yourself, or did you have to do all that
so
professionally?
If you know how to do it, you can lay it out yourself.
But you didn't?
I didn't.
Okay.
I was working with this publisher friend of mine.
Okay.
So he already had
who I would like as my publisher friend too, by the way.
So it's important to have contacts and friends who are already in the industry, who knows how to do things.
Actually, I was talking to a self-published author a couple of shows back, and he told me he did everything by himself. There's so much available on Google these days in terms of book layout, and so he took that route.
Exactly.
So I was wondering what route you took.
So mine is somewhere in the middle where I know people who can help me, and then
so to some extent you wanted to professionalize the layout, the illustrations.
Exactly.
Because it was important to get it out that fit the vision in your mind for this book.
Correct.
Yeah. Are there any similar books like this in your experience? I think early on you mentioned Tim Burton's the Melancholy Death of Oyster Boy and Other Stories, and that's sort of similar or in this genre.
Yes.
Are there any others that you researched or you read because they sort of fit in with what you liked?
I've been to Kinokuniya Books actually many times to look at the local literature. There are a lot of local writers out there who have published similar books like these, be it plays or short stories and poetry. So yes, there are. I mean, there are too many titles for me to name, but like we're talking about Michael Cunningham's book. So that is a good one that I recently found like a couple months ago. So I just came across and
that's not short stories, is it?
Short
The Black
stories.
Swan.
The Black Swan.
It's short stories.
Yeah,
okay.
short stories.
And next on my reading list, because I of course love Michael Cunningham from The Hours.
I know, and he writes like
Beautiful.
fantastic novels, and
Yeah.
and then when I
But
found
not
that
so surreal. I find
Not
you're
so
writing a
surreal,
lot
yeah.
more. You know, you're writing tips towards the really fantastical.
yeah, but when you read the short stories,
Yeah.
that one, The Black Swan, you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Okay,
Yeah, from The Hours to this, I thought, wow,
what a departure!
very versatile.
Oh,
yeah.
fantastic!
Yeah.
Are you looking forward to your next book?
I am. Have to start, getting disciplined and
Were
start
you
writing.
surprised at
and-
the reaction of people to this book when you put it out there?
Of course, I've got a lot of friends who are supportive. I've not yet really heard many people out there whom I do not know
Oh,
giving
good!
me
I'm one of the
feedback.
first.
Thank you so much. I mean, there are people who will drop me notes and messages on Facebook, and they
Yeah.
say, really lovely and beautifully written and illustrated. So I felt really touched and grateful for their kind words and, like yours. So I hope, it doesn't matter if they don't reach out to me, but so long as this book can touch them in some ways, I'm more than happy.
Well, congratulations.
Thank
You've been
you
listening
so
to
much.
Talking Books. I've been looking at an exquisite, but mostly I think of you. This is Talking Books. I'm Michelle Martin. Thanks for your company.